What's going on, creators? Welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to go over the difference between APS-C and full frame, and I'm going to bring in a few friends over into this video that's going to help us out. They're going to give their insights. Let's get to it. So if you are interested in photography and don't have a camera, or maybe you just picked up a camera but don't know all the specs inside of it, I'm just going to lay down a quick foundation on the difference between APS-C and full frame. But definitely check out a video done by Becki and Chris. They've done a really cool video that talks about both of them and how the sensors work and all that good stuff. So definitely check them out in the link below, and let's get to it. And before we get started in this video, let me know in the comments below what type of camera you're using, what sensor you're using, what do you like about it, what don't you like about it, are you switching over to full frame? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, so very quickly, if you're using a full frame camera, something like the A7 III or maybe a Canon 5D Mark III or 5D Mark IV, you're going to be using the entire frame. Pretty much it's like equivalent to a 35mm piece of film. On the other hand, if you're using something like the A6500, this has a crop factor of 1.65, which means pretty much you're not using the full frame sensors, squished down a little bit more, which kind of gives it effect on your lenses, especially if you're using full frame lenses on a crop censored body. It kind of feels as though like you're zooming in, but the focal length doesn't change, it's just as a tighter shot. So if you wanted to get an equivalent shot of that in full frame, you might just have to step back a little bit to kind of get close to it. And again, if you're just getting into photography and you want a little bit more in-depth information between both sensors, I could totally do a video for that for you guys. There's just a ton of videos out there, and I'll link some below down in the description box below. Check them out. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to introduce you to three of my good friends who are also photographers and videographers up in the North Jersey and New York area. Bengi, Sammy, and Amauris. They're super dope, amazing creatives, and so definitely check them out when you get done watching this video. Go to their Instagram and also YouTube channels, follow them, give them some love. So the first person I'm going to bring up is my buddy Sammy, who's an amazing portrait and wedding event photographer. He actually shoots weddings with me as well. Super dope dude, and definitely check him out, see what he thinks, and let's get to it.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Sammy and I'm a photographer and videographer based out of New York and New Jersey. Today I want to talk about crop sensor versus full frame when it comes to event photography. I started with a crop sensor camera. The first camera that I had crop sensor was a Canon 80D. And I switched from this camera to the Sony A7 III. I can't show you that camera because I'm actually shooting with it. The reason why I switched to the A7 III, I really love this camera. Pictures were awesome. Video was awesome, but one of the reasons why I switched was because in low light, when it came to event, and every time I went into an event setting, it was really dark in there, and you need a very high ISO in order to keep the exposure right and the flash. So you need to have a certain balance when it comes to the camera and the flash. You want the flash because you want to try to shoot a lot of pictures, and if the flash is too high, then it takes a little time to recycle more. So this camera, after you push it after like 1000 ISO, the noise in the pictures was too much for me, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. Another thing was I started getting into weddings, and this only has one chip slot, and that is very dangerous. If this chip were to go dead in the middle of me shooting somebody's wedding, then it's a problem, and that was starting to scare me. So the camera I went with was the A7 III because Canon didn't have a mirrorless camera. I wanted to change to mirrorless too, now go back to a DSLR. So the A7 III had those things. It was in ISO, you could push it up to like 4000, and the noise was barely noticeable. Another thing is that I had a 24-70 lens. On a crop sensor, that turns into a 36 to a 105, and sometimes in events you want that, you know, that wide angle shot, and 24 just did it for me, but I couldn't do that with a crop sensor camera. And when I put it on my Sony with a MC11 converter, it's just what I was looking for. But I mean, I could choose either or cameras, crop sensor, full frame, Sony, they both great cameras. But the reasons why I switched to a full frame was because of that, those reasons that I just gave. But both great cameras. If you're trying to see which one to choose to shoot, if you're really serious about your photography and you want those two chips and you want, you know, a actual 24-70 to be 24-70, then go with the full frame Sony. But the 80D it's a great camera. I can't complain about it. It got me into photography, into video. So those are my reasons, man. I hope this was helpful. Some people may be looking to see why this, why that, but that's about it, guys.
So I hope you got something out of it, what Sammy was saying. Personally, I started with an 80D and I shot weddings with an 80D, so I'm so used to shooting with an APS-C sensor camera. Now that I'm shooting with a full frame camera, I get the benefit of using the low light performance and also getting the wider images. Before using the 80D, you know, it was a tighter image, so I had to step back a little bit. But now I can slap on maybe even a wider lens and have that wider depth of field and view that I couldn't have done. So the next person I want to bring up is my buddy Bengi, and we're gonna go over his experience in shooting video from a APS-C sensor perspective and full frame. Since he shot with both, let's check it out.
Hey, what's going on, people from the tubes? Bengi Gonzalez here, videographer and photographer based out of New Jersey, and I'm super excited to be here on Josh's Luciano's page to talk a little bit about my personal experience with videography and when it comes to full frame and crop sensor camera. And as far as my perspective when it comes to full frame sensors and crop sensor cameras, it's broken down to 3 different things that I thought were crucial, but now that I have both might not mean as much, and to you it might not either. When we look at the 3 different things that I think are important, let's look at light. When we look at light and we think about, you know, event photography, sometimes we're shooting in the worst of cases where there's barely any light. And so back in the day we used to remediate with one of the most important things, which was aperture on a good lens. If you had an f1.4, you let in a lot of light in, but sometimes that was just not enough and you had to bump up the ISO, and all of a sudden you started seeing some grain. So with new technologies in better cameras, we're starting to see this thing where manufacturers are coming up with technology that the ISO performance is ridiculous, and you could push those ISOs, you know, past 6400 and still get some really good footage, and you know, it's usable. Now when we also look at the other aspects like zoom, obviously with crop there is a zoom aspect, meaning you're closer to your subject, which sometimes it's a good thing. For instance, if you're in a event photography like a wedding or a concert, you want to get close to your subject so you can see their facial expressions. It's not always wide, and you want to get those intimate moments. You can always counterbalance that with a very, very wide lens where you have a 14 millimeter or even lower, like a 10 or 12 millimeter on a crop sensor camera, and have the same performance as far as, you know, field of view. You can always compensate for light, for zoom, and for bokeh. So I don't want to discourage you, but really think about what are you giving up and what are you gaining, and are the offsets worth it, and can you do something about the offsets? If it is light that you're looking for, does the camera perform great in low light with great ISO performance? If it is zoom, can you offset that with a wide angle or a narrow lens? If it is bokeh you're looking for, can you get a faster lens, or can you separate your subject from the background at any given time and offset that difference? All right, Josh, thank you for having me here on your channel. I'll see you later.
Ever since I started YouTube, I've been dabbling more into the video side of things. So I guess you can call me a hybrid shooter since I shoot both photo and video. One thing I do like about APS-C sensor cameras is that, you know, you're technically punched in. And to me, that's really cool to have that advantage in something like the Sony a7 III, where I can take advantage by punching in Super 35 mode, and I can get that extra zoom factor in there. The person I'm gonna bring up is my buddy Amauris, who's an amazing portrait photographer and cinematographer. I'm gonna be touching base on the portrait photography side and showing you how possibly you can get the same kind of equivalent type of photo using APS-C or full frame camera. Let's get to it.
So what's up, guys? Thank you, Josh. So pretty much what I want to talk about right now is the difference between a full frame and a crop frame. All right, so what we're gonna do right now is take a shot with the 85 when I'm facing. I'm not gonna move. You're gonna see a difference. Okay, so making it fair, I got an 85,000 here. It's a crop frame body, interchangeable lens. You're gonna see from this camera. All right, you're gonna see them right on the screen right now, right there. Full frame crop. Same distance. As you can see, you get more shallow depth of field with the full frame because it's capturing more. You can get away with so much when it comes to portraits. The client doesn't know. So your focus, they just want to see the product. The advantages is definitely you have more details and more depth of field when it comes to the photo compared to a crop frame camera where you lose some of that. You have more advantages of lenses for the full frame, but you can still use a full frame lens on a crop frame body. But I highly recommend getting a crop frame lenses because they are more budget friendly And yeah, Josh, back to you. Don't forget to subscribe.
So yeah, technically you can kind of get the same type of photo from a full frame and an APS-C sensor. Now granted, there are some little differences in compression and all that stuff, but that's getting too technical right now. This isn't that type of video. But definitely I want to leave you guys with this one thing, is that, you know, whether you're starting off with a crop sensor camera or a full frame camera, you know, as long as you're taking the photos and creating content and creating imagery that you enjoy and that other people will enjoy, you know, that's what matters the most right now. You know, you can make a lot of money using a crop sensor camera. You can make a ton of money as well just using a full frame camera. At the end of the day, it's really about the person using the tool and how they're capturing and telling the story, whether it's for photo and video. Until next time, thanks for watching this video. Hit that subscribe button below and also that bell notification so when I post videos, you get it. And yeah, let's get this thing. Wait, that's a Cody Warner. Follow him too, down below.